What's up, guys? Welcome to Star Wars Timeline. Today is Thursday, which means another episode of The Bad Batch has come out. We're talking about Season 2, Episode 4, Faster. Guys, as always, thank you so much for checking out my content. If you enjoy my reviews, please consider liking this video, sub to the channel, drop your comments in the video section below. So what do we have here? I think it's a case of a new paint job, but the same old pod race. It's a pretty straightforward episode. There are things in it which I absolutely enjoyed, other things which I was more critical about, but I want to say right from the outset that most of the stuff I'm going to talk about here is my personal bias. This is how we all watch content. I think what is there, it's well delivered, well done, but it's greatly going to depend on who is viewing it and how you're interpreting this information, and that's going to greatly affect how you're going to like this episode. Anyway, as we mentioned, very straightforward plot. We're traveling to a remote planet of Saphatoma, which kind of looks exotic and interesting, but we're hitting the same exact notes. Pod race course, betting, trouble with a local gang leader. Sounds familiar? Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was an homage or tracing the same story beats from the Star Wars prequels, particularly The Phantom Menace, obviously the huge pod race, Anakin winning it, and so forth. So, we are basically in the same storyline beats where Sid is taken hostage after losing a bet to Malaysia. I mean, they're still playing around a little bit with the plot, but generally it's kind of the same. And the team must win to get their friend back. In the case of Phantom Menace, obviously Qui-Gon Jinn had to make the same bet in order to get Anakin off the planet. And the most unique thing about this particular storyline, of course, it's Tech's own moment to shine. They're pulling one of the Bad Batch members from the roster, and they're basically giving the episode to him. This is his moment. So, what did I enjoy about this episode, and which of the things I found a little bit more problematic? First, let's hit off with the good stuff. As I mentioned earlier, everything that is done here, it is expertly done. It's well told. You know, within the context of this story, I couldn't have any kind of defects that I could point out and say, oh, that's kind of poorly done. The story works here. And we do get character development. You know, we realize that these are friends, they're family, they're willing to stand for one another. But not just the siblings, Omega and her younger brothers, but they're also willing to stick their necks out for Sid, and they care for her at this point. She is their friend. If she started off as somebody who just hires them out for these odd jobs, they consider her family too now. And we kind of delve a little bit more into Tech's analytical mind, that sometimes you win battles not just through sheer force, but you have a strategy at play here. And this is what Tech is mainly known for. He's going to think things out, he's going to analyze the course, he's going to figure out what other racers are doing, and that's what achieves victory there. We also have the gang leader, Milagi, who warns us, the crew, he tells us about that, you know, it's Sid, you guys think you know her, but there's a shadier side to her, and she's not who she seems. If I were you, I would watch your backs, because at one point she's going to betray you. So that's interesting. That's pushing character storyline a little bit forward, and it kind of makes the audience pause for a minute. Hold on a second. Even though Sid says who she is, and she says, I'm not that person anymore, what if she's put in the same kind of environment or position where she's forced to betray the Bad Batch team? That would be actually quite interesting, and this would be an episode that we sort of rewind back to and see the earlier seeds of Sid's betrayal are here in this episode, where this other crime boss, he's basically shares a past with her, and he's basically informing us maybe there's more to Sid than we're led to believe. That is quite interesting, and I really enjoyed that. Obviously, I loved the eccentric new droid, Teo. Absolutely beautiful design. I loved his little rotating head, how it like goes back and forth talking to other friends. And he's so smug. He's full of personality and charm. Obviously, droids are treated almost like sentient beings in the Star Wars universe. It's not meant to be taken seriously. He basically is, he's such a character. But he's so distinct and different from C-3PO or R2-D2 and other droids that we know. So he really, was interesting, and he like earned a spot in my heart. It's like, okay, Teo is pretty fun. But also, aside from him, I enjoyed other racers in this episode. Primarily, when you notice, most of them are droids as well. You have like a retrofitted Roger, a separatist droid there, but he's red and he looks a little bit different. Then we have another one, also a droid. He's like banging his hand like a gun. That was kind of funny and interesting. We have a C-3PO, two of those models, and just other alien species, but it was mostly droids, and I kind of liked it. Okay, droids, it makes sense. They're machines. They're willing to, they can manipulate the tools and instruments to get the faster victory and stuff like this. So it kind of makes sense for me. The action itself was also very well done. I'll return to that. It's not something that I particularly was super hyped about, but once again, what's in this episode works really well. It almost felt like Star Wars meshed with Twisted Metal video game, right? Instead of just normal obstacle course, now they added challenge, and now it's open free for all. It's like cheating is allowed. There's not cheating no longer. You could actually disable other racers out of the race and like use weaponry and stuff like that, which is quite crazy. Even I believe one of the audience members was hit, and it just like turned around, they look at him like, oh, let's keep watching the entertainment here. That was also very well done, so I have nothing negative to say about action. It was good. So what are my personal issues with this episode? So far, I think it's probably my least favorite of season 2. Why? First and foremost, the most obvious glaring thing is the plot is too familiar. I mean, it's basically Phantom Menace redone for the modern audience, and I'll be honest with you guys, please don't crucify me, just my personal opinion. I had very, very difficult time watching Phantom Menace way back in 1999. I came out of high school and I just went to see it in theaters, and I did not enjoy that movie at all. Even the amazing lightsaber duel at the end, the Duel of the Fates, as amazing as it was, as excited as I was watching it, it didn't save the movie for me. And I didn't care for the pod race at all. Again, it was well done. The action itself is very well executed in the Phantom Menace. I mean, you pop the Blu-ray today. I can't regularly watch Star Wars prequels. It's immaculately filmed. It looks absolutely crazy, kinetic and stuff like this. But what I didn't enjoy in Phantom Menace was that it felt empty to me. It felt that there was no substance to it. Like, I'm not enjoying the film up to this point. It didn't build any sort of gravitas or real tension. And when you throw me in the middle of an exciting action scene, by the time it's over, I just didn't care. I was ready to move on. I was willing to kind of give the movie a benefit of the doubt and see if the story picks up. And unfortunately, it never did for me. And we're basically rewinding back time. We're circling back to that Phantom Menace experience that I had, and we're watching another pod race scene. Albeit, in this particular episode, the story is more coherent. It kind of works a little bit better for me. But still, it's like, okay, another pod race. I don't care for it. So once again, this is my personal bias. I don't know. And another thing I want to mention is that the original pod race scene in Phantom Menace just felt so convenient and not well thought out at all. I mean, we have young Anakin, a 9-year-old boy who claims he's the only human who can do it. He never finishes a single race before that. I mean, I could have understood if Anakin was a eager teenager in his late teens. He's like, issues with his parents. He's rebellious, and he's winning victory after victory on Tatooine, but he's still a slave, or maybe not a slave, but he can't get out off this planet. He's really frustrated. But we know that he's the winner. He has victories behind his back. There's a little bit of winning streak there, right? He never finishes a race before conveniently Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Padme, they land on the planet, and Qui-Gon Jinn makes a bet, and suddenly the kid wins because of the Force. It's like a plot armor times 10, guys. I did not enjoy it. To this day, I think it's such a weak part of the film where Anakin conveniently wins because they got to push the plot forward. He's got to get off the planet. He's going to become this amazing, amazing savior of the Jedi Order. It didn't work for me. Another thing that I want to mention is that, very oddly, Tech's victory in this episode cancels Anakin's only accomplishment in Phantom Menace, right? Because once again, he claims to be the only human who could do it. What's going on here? Tech is basically, okay, I'm just going to put it in my little data pad here. I'm going to analyze the whole course, and he wins. What's the excuse here? Because he's a clone? Because he's more advanced than regular humans? I don't really understand how that works within the tapestry of Star Wars. If this episode is meant to be for prequel fans, prequel audience, how do these two reconcile with one another? How do you have on one hand this young boy who is I guess, enhanced by the Force because Qui-Gon Jinn opens the child's mind to it, and he says, trust in the Force, trust your ability, and you will achieve victory. Okay, maybe I'm not seeing it from the right angle. I'm just one of these jaded fans who doesn't see it, but maybe this is the miracle part. This is where Anakin's journey truly begins, and he says, okay, now I sense the Force. There's something greater than myself going on, and that's how he's able to win. Exactly the same way that Luke Skywalker was able to destroy the original Death Star, right? Before, in the original Episode 4, we know that he has a little bit of crash course in piloting when he's like shoots Wampa Reds on Tatooine, but it's a whole entirely different story, taking down the most advanced Imperial weapon. Yet, Luke Skywalker was able to do it. And maybe this is also how Anakin is able to do it. What makes both instances work is the fact that Force is there to enhance their senses. But Tech is not Force sensitive. Or is he? Which, once again, we get into a whole little mental gymnastics, because as we know, it is impossible to clone somebody who's Force sensitive. It never works out. It didn't work in the Star Wars Legends, and I don't believe we're at this point where in modern Star Wars canon this idea works. So I'm kind of discarding this point for the moment, that Tech is not Force sensitive, and yet he was able to win this race. And the last thing I want to mention, which did not quite work for me, is that this is definitely 100%, without a doubt, a filler episode. It's a side quest. And where, as I mentioned earlier, it sort of pushes individual character threads a little bit forward. You know, the whole idea of questioning Sid, the Tech is using, you know, his strategy, and the rest of the crew, they're not considering Sid their family. All of those elements have been played for before in previous episodes. You don't need a whole separate episode just to focus on the Tech to reiterate the point once again. So I felt like, in the greater scheme of things, as far as the entire show is concerned, it didn't move the plot forward enough for me. So again, it was just a nice deviation, a nice side mission, and there's an argument to be made against me to say, like, Ben, sometimes you don't need an episode to move the story. Sometimes you just want to have a fun ride. That's what Star Wars is, right? You sit down on a roller coaster and just have exciting and fun time. I'm just basically being over-analytical for the sake of this video, but if I were a 7 or a 10-year-old watching it right now, guys, all of those minutia, all of those details that I'm bringing forward here, they would not make any sense. I would not be thinking about those greater details. I would be just there, glued to the screen, like, oh my god, look at this amazing race scene. So once again, I think what's in this episode is done well, but it wasn't just enough for me to get really excited about. So, in all objectivity, I would give this episode a 3.5, maybe 3, somewhere around 3.5 out of 4, because it is well executed, well done. But for me personally, it felt like a more boring episode. I'm looking forward to things where we get the greater plot moving forward and moving closer to that place in time where the Bad Batch becomes actively resisting the Empire and joining the rebel cause. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for checking out this video. Please drop your comments in the video section below. Tell me if you agree or disagree on my take on this episode. Please let me know what was your initial reaction to the pod race in Phantom Menace, and how would you compare it to this pod race? Which one is your favorite? And did you feel that the story here was a little bit too close to the prequels, or is it something that you actually enjoyed, that it traced back to those steps and you kind of felt nostalgic and excited that you got to relive that exciting moment again? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Please like this video, and I'll see you guys with my next The Bad Batch review. Take care, everyone.